Wake up! It's the Sleep Unplugged podcast, episode 163, Insomnia and Public Health. You're looking tired and more than a little human. Welcome, everyone, to the Sleep Unplugged podcast. My name is Chris Winter. I'm a neurologist, sleep specialist, and your host for this episode of the podcast. If you're new to the Sleep Unplugged podcast family, welcome. If you're a veteran, welcome back. We are glad you're here. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can. Dr. Chris Winter Instagram, Dr. Chris Winter Twitter, Dr. Chris Winter Blue Skies, Threads. We have a YouTube page where we post all the video content of our show. And we actually now have a web page for the Sleep Unplugged podcast where you can see all kinds of information and we'll keep adding to it. It's obviously sleepunplugged.com. We've got a list of all of our award winners. We've got the results of the pillow fight. We've got information where you can link up with all the 4 Spotify music playlists of the music that we talk about. And we'll keep putting good information on there as we continue to build the webpage. Let's see here. Comments, corrections, criticisms. We have one from Charles regarding our episode a few weeks back. It was episode 161, Sleep on Television, The Dream's Dream on the Small Screen. Charles wrote, The Simpsons episode where Homer gets a sleep study is called Every Man's Dream, season 27, episode 1, not How the Test Was Won, which I just watched. LOL. That one is about the kids having to take a standardized test. Thank you, Charles, for correcting that. I'm not a huge Simpsons fan, so I probably blended some episodes there accidentally. Apologize for that. Appreciate you taking the time to correct that. Another quick announcement. Next week, we will do our lucid dreaming episode where we do every year, where I am going to talk about a location on the podcast where I am going to project myself mentally at night when I lucid dream. Your job will be to lucid dream yourself to that spot. So last year, I think we did next to the Coliseum. The year before that was the Eiffel Tower. So we'll pick a very famous landmark. We're all going to lucid dream ourselves to that spot. I'm going to be holding an object in my lucid dream. Your job is to come to that landmark, find me, see what I'm holding, and then text me, email me, DM me through all the social media, however you want to do it, and let me know what I'm holding. Can we, as Dr. Van de Castle thought, communicate ideas and things in lucid dreaming? We're going to find out. Let's see here. The music reference for this week's episode of the show is from one of my all-time favorite bands. I've loved them since their second album, and that is Cowboy Junkies. And the lyric, "You're looking tired and more than a little human," is off of their song Crescent Moon, which was off of their 1993 album Pale Sun Crescent Moon. That was their fifth album, and it came out in 1993, and I think it is a masterpiece. Canadian group, Margot Timmins and 2 of her brothers, and Anton Allen, I think is his name. The third brother, John, was actually in the band, but he quit before they released their first album. And here's something you don't hear every day. The Cowboy Junkies have been operating, I think, since like 86, and their lineup has never changed. And they're currently making music and touring. And if you have the opportunity to go see them, they're just the most amazing performers. And Margot Timmins is just an amazing storyteller. And can't say enough about this group. They're the first album that a lot of people, kind of heard and really got on people's radar was Trinity Session, which was their second album. It was recorded in the Trinity Church somewhere in, I think, Toronto. I might be getting this wrong, but I'll never forget. They wanted to record really stripped down. The album was sort of a response to a lot of the overproduced commercial kind of sound that was coming out at the time, and they wanted everything really stripped back. So they wanted to record in this church. And the church, kind of was reluctant to let them do it until the manager said, yeah, it's the Trinity Family Gospel Singers or something like that. He gave them a name that seemed a lot more overtly religious. And they're like, okay, well, if it's the Trinity, the Tim, no, it was the Timmons family gospel singers or something like that. And they were allowed to record in there, which they did. So we'll put on the album Crescent Moon, our Spotify Music Playlist Volume 4, Crescent Moon. I'm also going to add another song. Their seventh album, Miles from Our Home, was released in 1998. The title track, Miles from Our Home, had the lyric, I met you again in my sleep last night. So I think that's more than enough reason for us to put that song on the Spotify music playlist. There's also Winter's song off of their fourth album, Black Eyed Man, which is another great album. If you really want, if you're feeling down and you need a song to lift you up, their cover of the Townes Van Sant song "Live to Fly" is just unbelievable. To live is to fly. Sorry, to lives to fly is the Townes Van Sant song. Their cover of that song on the Black Eyed Man album is incredible, and I've always had this interesting relationship with Black Eyed Man because number one has the song on it, Winter Song, which is my last name, but also Black Eyed Man. One of my family ancestors was this guy named Matthias Winter, born in 1817, and apparently had this very dark complexion and very dark eyes. And his nickname was Black Tice. And Tice is actually where we got the name for one of our kids. So I always thought that was kind of a cool story about an ancestor. So we called one of our kids Tice, and that's where that came from. So the album Black Eyed Man, I always thought was kind of referring maybe to that ancestor. So anyway, Cowboy Junkies will put some songs on the Spotify music playlist. If you're having trouble finding the playlist, go to our website, sleepunplugged.com. Go to the little segment about Spotify music playlist and you'll see the code. Scan it, it'll go right to that playlist. You can add it to your phone and listen to the music. So, where are we? We are first Monday of the month. I can't believe it's already August. So, we are talking about insomnia. And I had this idea for this episode because the last episode on insomnia we did, it was a New York Times article talking about, this. No, I'm sorry, it was an Atlantic article talking about a woman who couldn't sleep and how, she said, this is insomnia is a crisis, it's a public health crisis. And so I wanted to do something related to public health. I've been kind of mulling that over. And wouldn't you know it, good friend of the show, Michael Grandner, and sleep researcher extraordinaire, uh, put on his LinkedIn page the fact that he had just contributed to an article that was published in the Journal of Behavioral and Cognitive Therapy. And it was an interesting article on insomnia because it was really about, to paraphrase here, what are we doing wrong from a public health perspective when it comes to insomnia? And the title of the article is Managing the Trajectory of Insomnia from Public Health to Relapse Prevention. And I thought that would be a kind of a cool article to sort of center the podcast around because it does a lot of interesting things. And I want to congratulate Michael and the rest of the authors for sort of taking a step back and saying, what can we do better here? And I've got a lot of ideas about that that probably would not fit into a great academic framework. I don't think the authors of that article would have probably wanted me in that conference room as they were putting this article together because I think a lot of what we do structurally and institutionally around insomnia is kind of part of the problem. But I do applaud them for taking steps to ask the questions like, how can we do better here? So I want to go through a little bit of this and offer one big suggestion that I would have that I would think would make a lot of difference. So I'll point out a couple things about the paper, and you can read along if you're able. The very first line of the paper, which I think has now become a law, that if you're writing an article about insomnia, you have to write this sentence as the first line of the introduction to your paper. And the line is, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia is the first line treatment for chronic insomnia, i.e., insomnia disorder. I love that. So basically, the gist of the article goes on to say, look, no guidelines exist, however, for how to manage insomnia before it becomes a disorder. And they're really sticky about the 3 month thing. And you know how I feel about adding any time frame to an insomnia diagnosis. If you're listening to this podcast and you've been struggling with insomnia for 2 months, you don't need to wait another 30 days to get this taken care of. I think we really hurt ourselves when we lean into these definitions of time because they're completely arbitrary. In fact, there was even language in the paper that basically said, yeah, we picked this 3 months because that's how we do other disorders like headache disorder and anxiety. It's like 3 months. I don't what that even means. Why do we even bother with these definitions? Nobody is coming to see us who doesn't have a problem. And adding numbers to it, I think actually make addressing the disorder harder rather than making it easier. So they go on to say, look, before we get into it, there's going to be a few caveats we want to lay out. And the first one is basically, we're going to assume that when somebody has problems with insomnia, we're going to keep doing more and more things for them. They're going to progress through a cycle of simple things to more complicated things. The second assumption they're saying is, look, we don't care who's doing it, which I have really changed my tune on that as well too. I kind of believe that as well. Like when I look sometimes at the establishment and how they deal with insomnia, I sometimes think that people outside the establishment might have a better perspective on it. So they're basically saying, look, whatever the professional is, they can do it. And then the final thing, it says the timing of prevention efforts may depend upon critical periods of transition in the etiology of insomnia. For example, the current diagnostic criteria specify that symptoms will occur at least 3 nights per week, which again, we're back to this situation. This is, for example, an acute stress disorder is defined as lasting between 3 days to 1 month. An adjustment disorder defined as the first three. Like again, we get hung up on 3 months, not two, not four, 3 months. So anyway, so they go on to say, whilst this may then suggest that 3 days to 1 month could be the timeline from the initial stress-related sleep loss to sleep-related stress, acute insomnia, prevention of insomnia disorder should be initiated early on, perhaps as early as 2 weeks after the stressor. Again, not three, not one. So please, 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 we've got to get away from these times. Nobody gives a shit. They don't care. I've never talked to somebody who said, well, I was having trouble, but I decided to give it X number of weeks before I gave you a. No, at some point, things become a problem. And usually from that point forward, they get worse. So there was reference to the 3 Ps of insomnia. Right. You're predisposed to something. That's where we should probably be focusing our attention. There is a precipitation. You have a bad night of sleep because you spent the night in a hotel room or you took a trip to Disney or I don't know, your favorite artist lost the Grammy for, best new art. I don't know, just whatever it was, it kind of fired you up. It happened. And now the insomnia begins. Where does insomnia begin? It's like, where does life begin? Where does insomnia begin? Like, does it begin as you're getting into bed the night that things go sideways? Or do you have to get out of bed the next morning, put your feet on the floor for the timer to actually start? Nobody cares. It is just talk that really doesn't help anything. I think we need to talk in terms of, sure, timing, as things progress, as things are, going. But these 2 weeks, we need to start maybe as soon as 2 weeks. Oh, really? So 14 days. Why? Who comes up with these things? I don't really understand. So anyway, so now they're getting into it. They got all their time frames, but they're basically saying, look, we need to do more early on before it hits the fan. You can't say hits the fan in an academic article. You can say it on the Sleep Unplugged podcast, but you can't say it in an academic article. So what are we doing before it hits the fan? Here's a great passage from it. It's not immediately clear the degree to which the content of the public health campaign. So we're talking about a public health campaign So they're doing what I think needs to happen, which is we need to communicate directly with the public in some way to create education about sleep. And so as they're figuring this out, their thought is we need to, consider the content of this public health campaign and how much should focus on sleep hygiene. And then they answer their own question. Relative to other approaches, poor sleep hygiene is not implicated in the pathophysiology of insomnia, and good sleep hygiene does not appear to be protective against insomnia. So to me, they answer their question. Nobody cares about sleep hygiene when it comes to insomnia for a variety of reasons. Number one, as you've mentioned, it doesn't really work. Number two, everybody knows about sleep hygiene. Whether you're following it or not is a different consideration. Everybody knows about it. I know drinking a lot of alcohol will make me drunk, but I might decide to drink a lot of alcohol. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not surprised by the outcome. God damn, what happened here? Why am I face down in a ditch, missing a shoe in my shirt? Oh man, I wonder if it was those drinks I was having that as I continued to drink them, I became less and less conscious, aware, and my memory seemed to be impaired. I need to figure this out. No, you knew it. You knew it going into the situation. Everybody knows about sleep hygiene. Everybody's room is dark. And specifically, insomnia patients know a lot about sleep hygiene because this is the only piece of education that's readily available to them and frankly being shoved into their face with every article. We've talked about this before. This was what I was trying to say about extreme insomnia last the first Monday of July, that we're putting this information out at a remarkable pace. And at some point, I think it becomes harmful or predatory, right? Because we've got this population that Michael is talking about, this threatened insomnia population or this insomnia population, the pre and post. And the public health campaign that is being waged right now without Michael's help is the media campaign that is constantly talking about sleep hygiene and this author who didn't sleep for 7 years. And she's going to write an expose about it. That's what they get. So I think let's get rid of the sleep hygiene. That's taken care of. There's nothing wrong with it, and we should all be practicing it, but it's not the solution that they are looking for. So they wrote, therefore, instead of sleep hygiene or sleep hygiene alone, a public health campaign could be supplemented with other approaches, like the 5 principles of good sleep health. Okay. What are the 5 principles of good sleep health? They're value sleep, prioritize sleep, personalize sleep, trust sleep, protect sleep. The only one of those 5 things that I think really applies to this group is maybe trust. Do they value sleep? Goddamn, they value sleep. That's part of the problem. They value sleep so much that when it goes sideways, it is a massive fire. Do they prioritize sleep? Oh, yes, they prioritize sleep. Again, we're talking about insomnia, not sleep deprivation. Insomnia patients prioritize sleep. Prioritize sleep to a point where they're panicking about it, right? This is Kelly Barron's orthosomnia. They prioritize sleep. Their sleep isn't working. Got to get a sleep monitor. Sleep monitor says I'm only sleeping 5 hours. I need to be sleeping 6 to 7, or I'm going to get like that's the mindset, right? So they value sleep. They prioritize sleep, sometimes too much. Oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to watch Wheel of Fortune. It goes off at 7:30, and instead of watching Jeopardy and going to bed at 8, I think I'll probably go to bed at 7:30. I'm going to try to catch that sleep bus when it comes. I don't want to miss it. So I'm going to try to get a little bit more sleep. So they're prioritizing, they're valuing, personalizing. Sure. I mean, when I see insomnia patients, they've done a lot already. Chris, I've tried every pill. I've seen other sleep experts. I bought a new mattress. I got a new pillow. I got these new special pajamas. I've got this weird vibratory device that I ordered online, paid $700 for. They've done it. They're personalizing their experience. It's not working, but they're personalizing it. They've got their personal sleep pill regimen that they're being given by their primary care. It's personalized. Protecting sleep. Yeah, I mean, sure. Again, I think the prioritize value, protect, to me, are all kind of the same thing. To me, when I say protect sleep, when I talk to my patients, I'm saying give yourself the opportunity to sleep. Protect that time. Protect that space. Make it quiet. Protect that schedule. Make it consistent. Hey, but I got to get some stuff done. No, I'm sorry. Protect that time. It is designated as your sleep time. I don't care if you sleep or not. I just want you to set aside that time so you have the opportunity to do it. To me, trust is the big one. Do you trust the sleep to work? And I think that's where I would focus the public health campaign. Forget it all. It becomes trust. And where does trust begin? And this is where I think we have really gone astray when it comes to sleep education to the public. And that is, we don't trust that we have an intrinsic ability to sleep. That is one message that we are not getting out to individuals. We're not getting it out to the public. And what do I mean by that? So when you actually look at individuals who have insomnia, we know they sleep more than they think they do. Their sleep times often fall within a normal or a very near normal range of sleep, somewhere 6 to 7.5 hours of sleep per 24. We know this. Why is this not in the paper? Why are we not educating people about this? This is the piece of information that if it exists in somebody's mind before the insomnia starts, it can really be reassuring. Sorry about that. My dog needed to go somewhere. He was scratching at the door. So, to me, that is such a bedrock principle. Why do we not talk about that? Why do we not? Yeah, sure. Educate the public on sleep hygiene because they already know it. Forget sleep hygiene. This whole paper again fails to really get at the fact that the public health campaign needs to be, hey, listen, you got a sleep problem. We're going to help you fix it. But relax. It's not nearly what you think it is. Not only is it not as bad as what you think it is, it's not doing what you think it is, right? So, there was a meta-analysis in 2012, looked at the average total sleep time for insomnia patients. It's usually shortened by about 30 to 60 minutes. Not a lot, an hour. And maybe more importantly, they're reducing sleep to a place that's still well within functional boundaries, right? So we're not saying that the insomnia patient's sleep is perfect or normal. We're just saying that the scale of this problem is such that, yeah, you're missing out on 30 minutes, an hour of sleep. Let's see if we can work on getting that back. But until then, you can go to work, you can operate an independent life, you're not going to die. These are the kinds of things that need to be out there. Can you imagine the commercial, that talks about that? Just a simple fact. Do you know how many people come to my clinic? And at that point, when you said, hey, the average person, da, 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 like, you're functional, like, the people who absorb and take that information in, it can be curative. When I work with organizations and clients and patients and, let's take a sports team. My job is to do exactly what Michael is talking about. It's not treat the insomnia within the organization, which is part of the job. But the bigger part of the job is let's prevent it before it ever starts. And how do you do that? Great education. Hey guys, you're going to have nights where sleep becomes problematic. But hey, rest assured, most people who struggle to sleep within 6 to 7.5 hours of sleep. Most people with insomnia are only losing about 30 minutes to 60 minutes. And most people who struggle with sleep are still well within functional boundaries, which is why they can't take a nap. They're not that sleepy, right? So we also need to understand that subjective and objective thoughts about sleep are not the same. A lot of people with insomnia radically underestimate their sleep. They're reporting total sleep times 3 hours when it's really 6. So here's a public health campaign. Sleep perception and sleep reality are two different things. And you can word it in a way that, resonates. I'm not an ad. I don't create ads for a living. But it's like stroke education. When you see it, time is, remember, there was an ad for a stroke. Time is brain. Woohoo! Hot damn, that's a great, great slogan for stroke. Time is brain. I get that. I get that. That resonates with me. That the longer I wait to do something, the more brain could be lost. What is that catchy slogan that basically says, relax, what you think happened last night probably didn't? And the more severe you think what happened last night, the more likely I think what I just told you is true. Chris, I don't know. I had a bad night's sleep last night. I think I lost out on 30 minutes of sleep. You probably did. Oh, Chris, I had a terrible night last night. I think I only got 30 minutes of sleep last night. Nah, I don't think so. You look way too good for that. Why don't you go take a nap? Oh, I can't. I tried. I can't fall asleep. Okay, well, here we go. So I think that that's really important. And it's also important to kind of bake into this message. People are not lying. They're not malingering. They're not trying to get attention. This is what they feel. This is what they feel. It's just that what they feel isn't right. My God, I'm having this searing pain going down my left arm. There's something wrong with my left arm. No, I think you're having a heart attack. No, no, no. My heart feels fine. It's this crazy pain in my arm that radiates up my neck. I'm telling you, that is referred pain, and it's an atypical way that a heart attack can present. So I know it feels like your arm is, on fire or having a shooting pain going down it, but we need to get you to an ER, and until then, eat this aspirin. And then they get diagnosed, oh, it was a heart attack, but it didn't feel like one. I get it. And feeling's important, and perception's important, and hearing is important. This is why a lot of times, if you deal with insomnia, you get a rough review from a patient. Didn't listen to me. No, I did listen to you. I hear what you're saying. It's just what you're saying is not really matching up most likely with reality. This is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. So, when you look at insomnia patients and normal patients, people who don't have insomnia, insomnia patients are normal, they just have insomnia. Insomnia patients may get slightly less sleep overall, again, 30 to 60 minutes. They have continuity issues with their sleep. These are things we need to talk about. A person who wakes up over and over because of sleep apnea, a person who wakes up over and over because of narcolepsy is going to have symptoms of, quote, insomnia. So the individual with sleep apnea who has 78 breathing problems per hour, as soon as they fall asleep, their airway collapses, they wake up to catch their breath. They fall back to sleep, the airway collapses, wake up to catch their breath over and over and over again. These people may tell you it takes them hours to fall asleep, when in fact you ask their partner, no, 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 no. They're asleep before their head hits the pillow. Then why are they telling you it's taking them hours to fall asleep? Because they fall asleep into a light stage of sleep. They're not very there very long before they wake up. And their brain doesn't catch that little period of sleep. TV show I'm watching right now, The Americans. There's a lot going on in The Americans. The Americans one of the only TV shows to win a Peabody Award for writing or something, or either a Peabody or a Pulitzer. Sorry, I'm forgetting. But like, it's a really good show, and it was one of those shows that I kind of missed when it came out. And I was like, okay, I liked, Carrie Russell and that diplomat show she's on, and I was like, I'm gonna go back and watch that. It's a really good show, but there's a lot going on, man. And what's interesting is, I've said this before, but my partner, my wife will fall asleep. I'm like, honey, you gotta wake up. You gotta see the daughter. She's a spy now, and you gotta check this little scene out with her. And so as I rewind it, I'm watching it and realize, oh, I didn't see that part. Right. So I fell asleep. Now, if you'd asked me, Chris, as you're rewinding, did you see all of this show leading up to what you're about to show your wife? Yeah. Yeah, I was awake. I was sitting here eating some chips and having a kombucha and watching my show and winding down from the day, and I was wide awake. No, you weren't. You missed it, right? So I think it's important for people to understand these types of things. So, and the final thing is that we've got to get out the message that insomnia and sleep deprivation are not the same thing. Are you slightly sleep deprived? Sure. Yeah. You're missing out on 30 minutes to an hour. But I really want to create distinctions here between insomnia and whatever sleep deprivation that is, and people who are willingly not valuing sleep, not setting aside that time, not prioritizing it, not protecting it, and they're only sleeping about 3 to 4 to 5 hours a night. That's all they go to bed at midnight, they're up at 5 o'clock to go to work. I think that's a completely different issue. And that's where the danger lies, right? And that's where we should really be focusing on that. So to me, I love the fact that we're thinking about ways to get better information out there about insomnia to head this off. And, to me, some of my top ones would be number one, stop saying can't sleep. If you're a sleep provider and you get interviewed for an article, hey, I was just, wanting you to give us some tips and things for our readers about what to do if they can't sleep. Stop agreeing to do that article if you're going to talk about it in those terms. I don't. I'm tough about these things. I'm happy to give you some tips, but I want it mentioned in the article that nobody can't sleep. That's not a real thing. You may have difficulty sleeping tonight, it might take you an hour or two to fall asleep, but in general, we all sleep. So I'd like for that to be included. Because every time you don't, you're reinforcing a narrative that's making Michael's job and all those other doctors' job much harder. They got this one little article that nobody's going to read outside of the academic community, unfortunately. I don't mean that to be mean. It's just, it is what it is. You're competing against the New York Times and the article about that woman who never slept, or the Atlantic and the article about that person who never slept. And these tips and tricks for what you should do if you can't sleep that are in every publication known to man. So we've got to stop this narrative of what to do when you can't sleep. We've got to change the premise. Then we can do the interview, but we've got to change the premise. Number two, we have really got to help people understand what it means to have insomnia and that the sleep hygiene and all these things you talk about are not really going to fix it. And number three, forget the timetables. It doesn't matter. The timetables do not matter. What matters is people who are struggling, and when they come to see you, we address it. 3 days, 3 hours, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years. It doesn't really matter. So these differentiations are really not particularly helpful. So I just wish some of these items would just appear prominently in the institutional research we do and not, I wonder how much sleep hygiene education should play. We'll table that because we can't agree on that. I forget the sleep hygiene. It's out there. We can move past that. So that's it. Sleep, insomnia, public health, done and dusted. Tell me your thoughts about this. What do you think are the things that would move the needle in terms of getting information out there? People say all the time, oh, it's great that your kids don't have a lot of trouble sleeping. I mean, they probably do. But I was doing the quote unquote public health education throughout their lives, ignoring things that needed to be ignored, reframing their thoughts. Dad, I can't sleep. No, you just had trouble sleeping. It's fine. You probably slept more than you did. No big deal. And it's not going to have any consequence to your day. So have a fun day in third grade. Goodbye. Like all the time, just little bits here. How can we create that kind of steady, positive, helpful stream of information to people? That's my question to you. Hit us up, Dr. Chris Winter, Twitter, Dr. Chris Winter, Instagram, Dr. Chris Winter, TikTok, Blue Sky, Threads, whatever. We have a YouTube page. You can find me on the Sleep Unplugged podcast webpage. We do the sleep threats, the top 10 power ranking sleep threats every the last episode of every month. And we're gonna do something new with that. I've reached out to a very special sleep expert, and what I want to do is every month ask a new sleep expert to take a look at the sleep threat power rankings, and I want their input as to what should be on there, how they should be ranked, and any interesting research they want to point out about that. So hopefully at the end of August, we'll have a special guest contributor to the sleep threat power rankings. Until then, you can find the sleep threat power rankings. We'll put them on the web page. We'll also put them on my Instagram page at the very top. That's it. Have a great sleep. Have a great week. And until next week, sleep well.